in the brutal Vizconde Massacre of June 30th, 1991, where a mother and her two daughters were brutally killed. A mix of false confessions, fake investigations, and famous suspects emerged, and some even got away with murder. The Philippines has undoubtedly had more than its share of violent crimes. In Manila, there are some well-known families who can afford to live in gated villages where security is tighter than most. Security guards take the ID of visitors before they enter the gates, making sure the families are safe. Ironically enough, this is also exactly where it all happened inside one of these gated villages back in 1991, right at the heart of Metro Manila. On June 30th, 1991, 47-year-old Estrelita Vizconde and her daughters, 18-year-old Carmela and 7-year-old Jennifer, were found dead in their residence in BF Homes, Parañaque. Rodel Vizconde, a close relative of the victims, rushed to the scene within an hour of the horrifying discovery. Estrelita, 47 years old, had been stabbed over 12 times. Her 18-year-old daughter Carmela was raped and stabbed 9 times. Most shockingly, 7-year-old Jennifer was found murdered with 19 stab wounds. The husband and father of the murdered girls, Lauro Vizconde, was in the United States at the time, and there were no witnesses to the crime. 2 days after the murder, Lauro Vizconde returned home. At first, he was spared the details of his family's slaughter, but when he finally discovered the details of what happened to his family, he was left traumatized. Following the finding of the victims, the police immediately started the investigation and took fingerprints and photographs from the crime scene. When they were satisfied with the crime scene investigation, the police told the family relatives they could clean up the house, which later turned out to be the destruction of vital evidence. We were not talking that much about DNA. Unfortunately, that was not an option, because the laboratories at the time could not do it, said an officer from the National Bureau of Investigation assigned to the case. But you make the most of what you've got, and that means once you decide to burn it, you've given up. With so much vital evidence destroyed, the police had to focus on the murdered family's background, but there were only a few clues that could potentially explain why the Vizconde women were murdered with such brutality. For the police, the most confusing question was the motive. The Vizcondes were not extremely wealthy and had no known enemies. The family was quite close-knit, and everyone respected them. The murdered children, Jennifer and Carmela, were normal, loving kids who doted on each other. 7-year-old Jennifer, in particular, was very protective of her older sister, so who could have wanted to purposely destroy a seemingly ordinary and loving family? As the details of the murders spread to the public, the police found themselves under significant pressure to solve the crimes and to do it fast. Their first set of suspects were 6 house burglars from the Barroso gang who were notorious for breaking into luxury suburban homes. The police arrested them after they confessed to the Vizconde murders. But from the get-go, the Vizconde family was skeptical about the robbery motive. They claimed that appliances and car keys were left behind, while police insisted that expensive pieces of jewelry were stolen and later traced to pawn shops upon the burglar's confession. But despite the family's objections, the police arrested them and quickly closed the case. But still, the Vizconde family continued to doubt the burglar's story. Rodel Vizconde, the relative who found the bodies, pointed out several inconsistencies. He heard the burglars claim they moved the victims' bodies to the second floor of the house, but the Vizconde home was a bungalow with no second floor. The burglars also mentioned being chased by the family's dog, which the Vizcondes didn't have. Their confession included a struggle in the living room where they supposedly stabbed Estrelita, yet no bloodstains were found there. These contradictions led the family to suspect that the confession was completely made up. But why? This suspicion was confirmed when the burglars were brought to the media and admitted they had falsely confessed. They claimed they were tortured and abused by the police and showed bruises and cuts on their bodies as evidence. Due to a lack of sufficient evidence, the 6 burglars were let go. The second set of suspects was a group led by engineer Danilo Aguas, whose fingerprints were allegedly found on the house's garage lights. Again, there was a lack of evidence linking them to the crime. Officers then looked into the background of the family, but came up with nothing. Over more than a year, the NBI followed several new leads and picked up a number of suspects for the Vizconde murders, but none of the charges stuck. The lead investigator proposed that no one in their right mind would commit such a crime unless it was about drugs. At the time, cocaine and crystal meth were very popular among addicts. Police took a closer look at the drug scene in BF homes, where kids from rich families had the means to get such illegal substances. While all this was happening, the grieving Vizconde family grew increasingly suspicious of how the investigation was being conducted. They suspected something bigger was at play, perhaps even a cover-up to hide the true perpetrators. Their suspicions were confirmed when one of the investigators came forward and claimed that he was threatened to leave certain names out of the investigation. The investigator also claimed he was ordered by a former general, whose relative was one of the suspects, to stop the investigation and hand over all the evidence to him, but with no concrete evidence, eyewitnesses, or confessions. The case did not make any progress. The Vizconde massacre remained unsolved for almost 4 years until an eyewitness came forward. Jessica Alfaro, a self-confessed former drug addict, confessed to everything she saw during a police interview on April 28, 1995. And here is where the puzzle begins. Jessica Alfaro pointed the finger at the children of wealthy and well-known families known as the Alabang Boys. For those who don't know, Alabang is an area south of Manila that is popular among rich and influential families. The suspects included Hubert Webb, son of Freddie Webb, who was an actor, a former basketball player, and a congressman of the city where the crime was committed, and later a senator. Jessica claimed Hubert Webb was the mastermind of the crime. She also claimed a policeman was involved in this, Gerardo Biong. Jessica's account of the crime was bone-chilling. She said that the night before the murders, around 8:30 p.m., she and her then-boyfriend Peter Estrada drove her Mitsubishi Lancer and met up with Hubert and his group at Ayala Alabang Commercial Center to do crystal meth together in the car park. Jessica, who was 27 years old at the time, said she was only looking for a good time with her boyfriend and his friends. She said that they did not hang out with the group regularly, but crossed paths occasionally, as they had the same drug supplier who was the son of a wine store owner. Hubert apparently asked Jessica and her boyfriend Estrada to check on the Vizconde residence. He was interested in seeing 19-year-old Carmela secretly, but her mom was strict and only allowed her daughter to talk to girls. Jessica agreed and followed the other cars to Vincent Street, led by friends Joey Filart and Miguel Rodriguez, in a Mazda pickup, while the rest were in a Nissan Patrol. Jessica went by the house around 10 p.m. Mother Estrada was there, and Carmela had just returned home. Carmela told Jessica to come back before midnight, and Jessica passed this to Hubert. The group returned to the Alabang Commercial Center to do more drugs while they waited. Jessica was told that Hubert wanted to confess his feelings to Carmela, although Jessica was sure that Carmela already had a boyfriend. Around 10:30 p.m., she saw Carmela driving with a man and dropping him off on the main road. At that point, Jessica figured he was Carmela's boyfriend. She said this to Hubert and passed him a message from Carmela that she was expecting them around midnight and would leave the gate unlocked. They were to flash the car's headlights twice once they arrived. Jessica claimed in her sworn statement that the assault was planned by Hubert, as she heard him say right before heading to the Vizconde residence that they would take turns violating Carmela, but he had to go first. Around midnight, they entered the house through the kitchen, as Carmela had left the gate unlocked for them. Jessica entered the house, followed by Hubert and Ventura, while the rest remained outside as lookouts. According to Jessica, Carmela was waiting for them in the kitchen when they arrived. Hubert followed her inside while Jessica went outside to smoke. On her way out, she saw friends Antonio Lejano and Artemio Ventura taking a knife from one of the kitchen drawers. After smoking, Jessica went back inside and peeked through a slightly open bedroom door. There, she saw Estrelita and Jennifer slaughtered on the bed, while Carmela was still alive, tied up, gagged, and crying. According to Jessica, the men killed Estrelita first before turning their attention to Carmela. She also described a horrifying scene where Hubert killed Jennifer, the youngest daughter. Jennifer had woken up to the noises and tried to help her older sister. She jumped on Hubert, biting his shoulder and trying to pull down his jacket, but despite her attempts, she was no match for the grown man. Angry, Hubert grabbed the little girl, pushed her against the wall, and stabbed her multiple times. Jennifer sustained the most stab wounds among the 3 victims, with her body showing the most severe injuries. Jessica claimed that after Estrelita and Jennifer were placed on the bed, Carmela was violated on the floor by Hubert, Lejano, and Ventura, who took turns assaulting her before killing her. Witnessing these horrors, Jessica left the house and went back to her car. Despite being high on drugs, she was terrified and deeply disturbed by what she had seen. In her statement, Jessica also mentioned that Hubert had paid a police officer named Gerardo Biong to manage the crime scene, and that Biong had done his best to tamper with, destroy, and hide evidence. Lolita Birrer, the ex-girlfriend of policeman Byong, came forward with additional details about the cover-up. She testified that she was with Byong the night before the murders and claimed that around 2 a.m. Byong had been informed about the crime. Bearer recalled that after receiving a phone call, Byong rushed to BF Homes. When he came back home around 7 a.m., she noticed him washing his hands thoroughly while paying special attention to his fingernails, which appeared to have dried blood on them. He also threw away a handkerchief that had a horrible smell and put a knife covered in aluminum foil into a metal cabinet. Two maids who worked for the Webb family, Mila Gaviola and Narissa Rosales, also gave crucial testimonies. At around 4 a.m. on June 30th, 1991, Mila Gaviola went about her routine of collecting dirty laundry. When she entered Hubert Webb's bedroom, she saw him awake, dressed only in pants and smoking in bed. While doing the laundry, she noticed fresh bloodstains on Hubert's shirt. Feeling suspicious, she went to the servants' quarters, but decided to check the stockroom near Hubert's room. From a small opening in the stockroom door, she saw Hubert pacing back and forth in his room, looking agitated and uneasy. Narissa, the other maid, remembered serving drinks to Hubert and two of his friends on the night of the murders. She recalled that Hubert asked for 3 glasses of juice on the night of the murders. Security guards of the community, Justo Kabanakan and Normal White, also gave details. Kabanakan recalled that Hubert Webb had entered their subdivision a few days before the massacre and had introduced himself as the son of then-Congressman Webb. White testified that he had seen 3 vehicles enter the subdivision on the night of June 29th, just as Jessica Alfaro had described. White also confirmed that police officer Gerardo Byong was the first to arrive at the crime scene. When Hubert's name came up in the investigation in 1993, he strongly denied knowing or approaching Carmela, but a friend of Carmela later claimed that he had seen them together and that Carmela had described Hubert as rude and arrogant, which was why she had turned him down. Hearings officially began in October 1995 at the Parañaque Regional Trial Court, ruled by Judge Emily T. Tolentino. The defense team presented 95 witnesses, including Hubert Webb himself, his father, and other relatives and friends, to back up Webb's claim that he was in the United States from March 9, 1991 to October 26, 1992. But on October 1, 1996, 1 year after the beginning of the trial, the judge accepted only 10 out of the 142 pieces of evidence submitted by the defense. According to Philippine law, alibi is generally considered the weakest defense, especially when there is direct testimony from an eyewitness that is corroborated by others. Among the defense witnesses was Artemio Sacagawing, a former NBI official who testified that Jessica Alfaro was an NBI asset and only took on the role of eyewitness when no actual witness to the Vizconde killings could be found. In response, former NBI official Pedro Rivera countered Sacagawing's testimony and claimed it was a lie. Rivera said that Sacagawing had a bad reputation within the NBI, which led to his transfer to remote assignments and early retirement. Rivera claimed that Sacagawing was not part of the NBI team investigating the Vizconde massacre, and that Sacagawing had falsely taken Jessica Alfaro's statement in April 1995 without a lawyer present. Rivera said Sacagawing's actions were suspicious and unprofessional. On January 6, 2000, Judge Tolentino found Hubert Webb, Peter Estrada, Hospicio Fernandez, Michael Gatchalian, Antonio Lejano II, and Miguel Rodriguez guilty beyond reasonable doubt of the crime of rape with homicide. They were sentenced to life in prison and ordered to pay the Vizconde family 3 million pesos for the murders. But 2 of the accused, Joey Filart and Artemio Ventura, are still missing to this day. They are believed to have fled the country for good. Parañaque policeman Gerardo Byong was found guilty as an accessory for burning bedsheets and tampering with other evidence related to the crime. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison and was released on November 30, 2010, after serving his sentence. In her ruling, Judge Tolentino criticized the testimony of the defense witnesses as inconsistent and biased. She noted that many of the U.S.-based defense witnesses, who were mostly relatives or friends of the Webb family, suffered from what she described as incorrigible and selective memory syndrome. For example, Alex Del Toro, the husband of a Webb relative, testified that he had hired Hubert Webb at his pesticide company in California, but both Webb and Del Toro were unable to describe Webb's job duties in court. Additionally, Tolentino found it impossible that Webb was working in a pesticide company company as he had asthma and several allergies. The judge also found contradictions in the testimonies of other U.S.-based witnesses who claimed to have seen Webb going to the beach, shopping, bar hopping, or playing basketball. Tolentino was doubtful about the authenticity of the photographs and videotapes allegedly showing Webb in the United States and claimed that they looked fake. She also questioned the validity of certificates issued by the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service and the Philippine Bureau of Immigration, and suggested that such documents could have been easily faked by the wealthy Webb family. On December 16, 2005, the Court of Appeals upheld the trial judge's decision and denied Hubert Webb and his co-defendants any chance for reconsideration. The Webb family continued to appeal the case, which eventually reached the Supreme Court in 2007. DNA testing, which had only recently become admissible in Philippine courts, was now a critical factor in their case. On April 22, 2010, the Supreme Court ordered the reopening of the case and granted Hubert Webb's request for DNA testing. But this procedure could not be carried out because the NBI reported that they no longer had the sample as they returned it to the Parañaque Regional Trial Court, which also denied having it. On October 8, 2010, Hubert Webb filed a motion for acquittal, arguing that his constitutional right to due process was violated due to the state's negligence or willful suppression of the evidence that could have proven his innocence. In December 2010, 2 months after backtracking from the order for DNA testing, the Supreme Court caught the whole country by surprise. 7 magistrates voted to acquit Webb and his alleged conspirators, while 4 justices upheld the guilty verdict of the lower courts and 4 others decided to not vote. In simpler terms, Hubert Webb and his fellow accused were set free. The High Court ruling also concluded that Alfaro was not an eyewitness, but an NBI informer. Following the acquittal, then-President Benigno Aquino III directed the Department of Justice to revisit the case. On June 28, 2011, Justice Secretary announced that new evidence had surfaced which proved that Hubert Webb had indeed been in the Philippines during the Vizconde murders. The evidence included tapes from the Philippine Bureau of Immigration, which had been restored by IBM and examined by the National Computer Center. The tapes showed Freddie Webb leaving the country, but Hubert was not seen leaving with him. Despite this new evidence, Lauro Vizconde's attempt to have the acquittal reversed was denied due to double jeopardy laws. The legal principle of double jeopardy prevents a person from being tried twice for the same offense. Now it is clear that there were many flaws in the case. The questions of who is truly behind the Vizconde massacre and whether Hubert and the others were genuinely innocent or managed to slip through the justice system may never be answered. What are your thoughts on the Supreme Court's decision to acquit Hubert Webb and his co-accused? Do you think justice was served, or do you believe the legal system failed in this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please consider dropping a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. Take care and see you in the next one.